Ukraine says its air defense systems downed more than 20 Russian attack drones and a missile overnight. Moscow is also stepping up shelling of some areas in Ukraine. Concern is growing, too, about strikes against infrastructure, which leave the population especially vulnerable as the cold weather sets in. But as DW's Amien Essif reports, Ukrainians are coming up with ways to contain the damage.
As the days grow shorter in Ukraine, memories of last winter return. The nighttime attacks and days without electricity or heat. Many expect another hard winter. But Ukraine has learned a lot about Russia's strategy and has been preparing all year. For one, the Ukrainian military will now prioritize large electrical substations for air defense. The stations deliver electricity to up to 500,000 households in big cities like Kiev and prove vulnerable to Russian attacks. Engineers are also rebuilding smaller substations damaged in Russian strikes and housing them in blast-resistant concrete. Last year, the Russians destroyed around 3,000 local substations just in the Kiev region. The new sheds can't withstand a direct hit from a missile, but they can absorb shrapnel from a nearby blast.
Maybe there will be some damage, but if there are any impacts, it won't be as significant, and we can quickly react to repair this object and make it work again.
Despite the lessons learned, Ukraine's energy infrastructure is going into this winter at a disadvantage. Russia has destroyed a vast amount of expensive equipment, and replacements are only arriving in Ukraine piece by piece.
And it means that resilience in general, of course, is lower than before all these things started. That we are in between. From one side, we well prepared, we have understanding what's happened, we have a lot of training and preparation done. From other side, from equipment side, we are on weaker position.
But Harchenko believes Russia no longer harbors the illusion that it can bring Ukraine's cities to their knees through attacks on infrastructure.
I believe that it will be hard, but we will survive.
Air raid sirens in Ukraine's capital Kiev have been fairly quiet in recent weeks, but few expect that to last very long.
Let's get across to Kyiv and speak to our correspondent there, Max Sander. Max, you were reporting for us from Ukraine last winter. Can you give us a sense of what that was like?
Right, Claire. So at the beginning of last winter, the Russians started stepping up their rocket attacks all over the country, both in scale and in frequency. And they were mainly targeting civilian power infrastructure. And at some point, these attacks proved quite successful. At certain points, more than 50% of the power infrastructure was indeed affected, leaving people in Kyiv, but also other parts of the country, at times without electricity, without water in some cases, and without heating in the dead of winter. So the Ukrainians were actually quite quick at learning how to adapt to the situation. They changed power lines, they repaired substations, and they brought in additional air defense equipment. But apart from that, still people here in Kiev and other places were affected. You would walk the streets of Kiev after dark, and you would see entire neighborhoods plunged into darkness. People sitting in the dark. You can see behind me there quite a few multi-story buildings here in Kiev and other urban areas across the country with 20, 30 flights of 30 floors essentially, and not having electricity also, for example, means not having an elevator, meaning people would have to move up 20, 30 flights of stairs just to go to a shop, go see a doctor, and moving with older people with children, for example, very difficult situation. So this affected people here in Ukraine in many ways in their daily lives. And from what we know is that on average, every Ukrainian was without power for 30 days last winter season.
Wow, and it affects so many aspects of life as you've laid out. So Ukraine now saying its air defense systems have downed Russian attack drones and a missile overnight. What do you think Russia is hoping to achieve with these attacks?
Right. So the Russians, of course, are saying they are targeting military infrastructure, but given the scale and frequency, that is difficult to believe. Now, the Ukrainians and others are saying that the idea is to make the civilian population suffer, bring them to their knees, let them in winter without heating, without basic amenities like water and electricity, and make them turn against their leaders. Now, they haven't been very successful in doing so. People did suffer, yes, that is true, and I think very few people will be looking forward to the upcoming winter season. They're dreading what is coming for sure, but I think knowing that they have been able to get through this and they have made additional preparations, that gives people here an additional resilience, I would say.
Well, thank you so much for that update. That's DW's correspondent Max Zander for us in Kyiv.